We're carrying on in our series through the book of Colossians. We're doing it little bit by little chunk, you know. Been going at it for about a year now, and we're now in chapter 3. We looked at the beginning of chapter 3 last week. This is a message called, You Have Nothing to Prove. You have nothing to prove. We've got this book that we're recommending if you want to kind of go a little bit deeper. A really great book for alongside your devotionals every day. It's a Tom Wright book. It covers Colossians. It also covers Ephesians, Philippians, and Philemon as well. So that's a great book just to dig a little bit deeper, just to accompany your daily reading if you want to look into this book and those other books as well. A couple of people also mentioned last week they were quite interested in what I was sharing about some Anabaptist theology, Anabaptist perspectives. If you're interested in that at all, it sounds like a sales pitch today, doesn't it? But, you know, it is, I guess. There's this book, The Naked Anabaptist by Stuart Murray. And some of us have done courses and things with Stuart Murray. He's a great guy, a British scholar, a real expert in the whole Anabaptist tradition and history. So if you want to dig a little bit deeper into what Anabaptism is all about, it kind of gives you a really good introduction and overview. That's available in the cafe as well, if you're interested. What else we got? Oh, how did that get in there? Oh, that was a mistake. Shine Rewind, apparently playing next Saturday night at high tide on the seafront. That was a, whoops, better move on. Go back to the previous book. Who's the guitarist there on the right? He looks cool. Anyway, drummer's all right as well. Sorry, Steve, where are you? I'll throw a shout out to Steve. And Dave's there as well. Dave, we are 3/5 church represented in the band. Moving on, don't get distracted. Anabaptists. As you may know, if you don't know anything about the Anabaptists, you might know that this is a church tradition that is very much rooted and soaked in peace and humility and compassion, which is a really great introduction into our verses today. We're picking up chapter 3. You can follow along in your Bible. It should appear on the screen as well. We're picking up from verse 12 of chapter 3. Therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Isn't it really great? Richard was picking that up first thing. It's almost like he's read ahead. He was cheating. But exactly the themes that he was picking up earlier today. Bear with one another. And if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony or total completion, you could translate that. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body. So great that we're talking about these verses today on Communion Sunday. And be thankful. So as I say, the Anabaptist tradition is very much rooted in this peace and humility and compassion, a lot of the qualities that Paul is describing there. But it's not easy, is it? We don't read a list like that and think, oh yeah, I've got that nailed. That's easy. Sorted that one. And so today, I've put in my notes, if you struggle with, and then I put exclamation like who doesn't struggle? So if you struggle with any of the following, like who doesn't struggle with any of the following, like maintaining your peace, staying calm, not losing your patience, becoming anxious, becoming stressed. If you struggle with being compassionate at all times, do you experience compassion fatigue at times? Do you struggle with anger? Do you struggle with hurt feelings? Do you struggle with feeling overlooked, undervalued? Then this message is really, 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 I hope, for you. I want to set it up, though. So just to recap what we were talking about last week, Paul, in his kind of metaphorical language, has set up these two realms, these two kind of consciousnesses, these two ways of being. And he's very simply talked about one as being the mindset, the realm of below, of the earth. And the other one is the sort of the mindset above, the mindset of the heavenly realms, if you like, of being sat with Christ. And last time, as we were talking about, it's kind of like just shifting, and in some ways, really practically, shifting our mindset out of the normal worldly way and into that Christly mindset. The title last week was, what would Jesus think? And it's a great question. We often ask the question, what would Jesus do? But so much of our life happens here, between our ears. And so often we need to be thinking, or it's so helpful to be thinking when we're challenged or struggling, to be thinking, okay, I'm wrestling with this, but what would Jesus think? What would Jesus think? And Paul's kind of metaphors for this, he talked about moving from one realm to the other as being like moving from death into life. It's a total paradigm shift. It's not a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No, it's a complete shift. He says it's like taking off one set of clothes and putting on a completely different set of clothes. Those old garments, they're gone, they're away, they're somewhere else. You're not wearing them anymore. And we've had the language of clothing again in today's verses. And last time he was kind of highlighting some of the negatives that might reveal that kind of worldly way. And there was a lot of focus on sort of sexual practice, sexual sin. But interestingly, he was rooting that in not a lack of willpower, but an idolatry. A sense in which our minds are still worrying and chasing after the emptiness of this world, and then very often left into sexual sin. He also talked about relational sin, how a community can be bumping into one another, stepping on one another's toes, getting stuck in all sorts of problems because of relational stuff. And he also talked about some of the arbitrary divisions, this group and that group, and you're not in, and you're out, and you're in, and you're out, and you're my friend, and you're not my friend. Some of the arbitrary divisions which so often infect and exclude so many people from our communities. So talking about a lot of negatives, now in these verses, he moves on to some much more positive things, the things we want to be aiming for, less the things we want to be avoiding. And remember last time, it's not presented that negative stuff in any sense of like legalism or moralism, like, well, you just need to try a lot harder and be a really good person, and that's what it's all about. No, it's about a mindset change even, which leads us out of idolatry and into Christly worship and lifestyles. So now we've got a bunch of positive things which are great markers and great targets to aim for. He starts off in verse 12 with this: therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. And it's really easy to rush past the first half of that sentence. I could zip over it, I could assume the first part, and we could get on to sort of explaining compassion, kindness, humility. What does that mean? What are the Greek words? What's behind that? How can we tease that apart? But actually, today, I want to spend the majority of my time on the first half of this verse, because if you don't get these first qualities, chosen, holy, beloved, you can't do, or I very much doubt you will be able to do long-term, anything that follows. This is the fulcrum. This is the key part of everything that he then says, I believe. You've got to believe it. You've got to absorb it. You've got to know it. Know it in your knower, as an old pastor used to say. This is where the resources come from for everything that follows. You can't get there just out of self-effort and trying really hard and must do better. This is the identity which empowers everything that follows. So first of all, chosen. The Greek word is literally elektoi, elect. Sometimes it might be translated that way. And sometimes we can take the idea of I was chosen in a sense, in a kind of superior way, in an exclusive way. It's like when you're at school and someone gets chosen for the team and someone else doesn't get chosen for the team, and that might be a basis upon which you might look down your nose at the other person and feel superior, maybe tease them a little bit. But it's not meaning that at all. Sometimes, even in Christian circles, we've used the concept of chosenness or election. It's sometimes used in the technical language as almost like the random kind of whim of God, like, well, you're elect and you're elect and you're not elect and you're elect and you're not elect. You're definitely not elect. It's almost like, and in certain schools of Christian thought that I do not subscribe to, that's kind of how election works. It's almost, at least from a human perspective, completely unknowable. God chooses to elect who he does and chooses not to elect who he doesn't. And that's just the way it is. It's almost meaningless It's completely purposeless from our perspective. But no, I don't believe that is true for a second. I think it's demonstrably not true. You are chosen. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you have been carefully and lovingly and deliberately and purposefully chosen. Yes, you. Hold up your finger like that. Yeah. And now bend it round. And then do that face. Okay, let's do it again. We're going to do that. And then we go. Yeah. Do that 3 times in the morning, every day. Probably when you're on your own, yeah? If you live with someone, they might look at you funny. You have been lovingly chosen by your Father, not because you're better than anyone else, but because our loving Heavenly Father loves to work with his kids. He loves to partner with his children. He has chosen, and he could do it all in his sovereign power. He could just do it all. But it is his delight to work with his kids. Who doesn't, if you've got children, or if you like children, if you don't like children, this isn't going to apply to you. But if you like children, it's fun to do things with kids. Sometimes it's fun. I'll qualify that. Sometimes, if you've got the patience of God, it's fun to do things with kids. You are chosen for a mission and a purpose. You are called. You're not just chosen because you're better than someone else. It's not like getting into the football team or the netball team at school. No, you're chosen because you're called for a mission, for a purpose. You're chosen by God. You might think that you chose God. I weighed up all the evidence and I looked at different world faiths and I did a bunch of reading, and then I decided to become a Christian. We use that language, have you made a decision for Christ? I have decided to follow Jesus. We put the emphasis on ourselves very often. And that, I understand why we do that, and that's fine as far as it goes. Sometimes we might think we've just stumbled, we've just kind of fallen into being a Christian, into following Jesus. Maybe you were raised in a Christian household. Maybe your parents went to church, and you've just always gone to church. And you might have made more or less of a decision, but you've kind of find yourself here kind of like, well, yeah, I've just kind of stumbled along and found myself here. But even if that's your experience, I want to tell you, there's more. God deliberately and lovingly chose you. Even if you feel that you would not have chosen him if he didn't choose you first, Scripture says. He chose you so that you could choose him. He prepared the path for you so you could stumble in to following him. You are as chosen as anyone could possibly be. It is a deliberate work of God. And there's a sense, of course, of incredible honor and privilege and delight in this. It's not something to be leveraged to disdain anyone else. It's something to be reflected on soberly, carefully. I'm chosen for a purpose. That's important. You are chosen for a purpose. That's important. It's worth reflecting on. It's an awesome thing. And then holiness. And sometimes we can read you are a chosen and a holy and a beloved people. And you think, well, okay, I might be chosen, but when we understand holy as inferring morally perfect and pure, we straight away can discount ourselves, exclude ourselves. Well, maybe I'm not chosen, maybe I'm not beloved because I don't feel like I'm holy. And we need to kind of get a more fully orbed, a more full all of Scripture idea of what holiness actually is. Holy does mean to be set apart. It means to be special. It means to be different and unique from the things of the world. So God is holy. He is beyond. He is unique. He is transcendent. He is unlike anything else in creation. And that holiness is awesome. It's powerful. It's a bit like the sun. If you get too close to it, you're going to get burned. And we have lots of images of that in Scripture, like when they touched the Ark of the Covenant and people were struck dead because they touched where the presence of the Lord is, or Moses approaching the burning bush and God says, take off your sandals because this is holy ground. Or when Moses wants to see the glory of the Lord and says, well, I'm going to hide you in the cleft of the rock because if you were to see me in all my glory, and all my holiness, you'd be destroyed, you'd be burned up. And when they approached the Holy of Holies, when the priest approached the holy place in the center of the temple, there were all these elaborate rituals to make sure that he was ritually pure enough to make that step. And we get into this idea of impure and unclean. And if you've ever tried to read through the book of Leviticus, you will be, well done you, basically. But you'll be drenched in this stuff about what's pure, what's impure, how do you become ritually pure in different circumstances. And very long story short, the kind of idea there is, if you touch a dead body or you touch anything like certain bodily fluids and that sort of thing, anything that they thought of that smacked of death or deathliness, it was inappropriate to bring that into the presence of the God of life. So there's kind of a logic to it. If you touch a dead body, and that thinking continued to Jesus' time when the Pharisees, if you'd gone into a Gentile's home, that made you ritually impure. You'd kind of mixed with the defiling influences. You were dirty, you were impure. But there's actually a really important shift that we see actually happening in the Old Testament. And we get it especially in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, where Isaiah is suddenly confronted with the presence of the Lord. And he says, woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips. And I'm of a people of unclean lips. And the angel takes a glowing coal, a kind of a rock of God's holiness, and touches his lips. And says, all your sin is covered over, it is atoned for, it is forgiven. The holiness of God has made you pure. It has washed you clean. And we see this with Jesus. Jesus, who is the embodiment, he is God in flesh, literally. And his holiness comes out and touches the unclean. It touches the sinner. It touches the unhealthy person or the demon-possessed person. And he's not made impure by that. No, it's the other way around. His purity, his holiness goes out and heals and makes new and sets free. So there's a fundamental shift in the mentality. The holiness of God is now going out and making all things new. So when you are called holy, it's another way of saying you're on this mission too. If you're in Jesus, then his holiness not only cleans you and makes you pure and sets you free, but you've kind of caught the fire. You've caught the fire, and everywhere you go, you're bringing light. You're bringing that healing presence. You're bringing that purifying holy fire. You're not sullied by the deathliness of the world. No. You're transforming the deathliness and darkness of the world. I think that's exciting. You look like you're really, really miserable. Oh, smiles, good, excellent. So the concept of holiness needs to be reframed away from being spotlessly pure in our own strength, and instead it focuses on the work of Christ and his saving mission in the world. And this is all because the PowerPoint is broken. This is all because you are beloved. We could think of like the calling and the mission of God as being this sort of stern thing, this kind of test. Like God is a cosmic driving instructor, with a chart saying, well, try this and then try that, and then I'll, give you marks out of 10. No, God calls you out. He chooses you. He sets you off on this mission with him out of affection. He loves you. He likes you. He thinks you're great. Get the finger again. Me, yeah, you. He thinks you're great, you're beloved. Feel the warmth, feel the delight of the Father's affection. You are beloved, and that's the truth which sets us free. And this is the fulcrum of it all. This is the centerpiece. Otherwise, all the rest of it is not possible. Only in the strength and the security of knowing that you are chosen and you are holy and you are beloved, will you have the resources to act in all the ways that follow. And when I see struggles in myself or in other people, when I see those sorts of struggles, why do I feel so angry? Why do I get so frustrated? Why do I feel so hurt? Why do I feel so overlooked? Why do I feel undervalued? Why has my ego got bruised here? Why do I feel hurt by that? Why do I feel insecure or anxious or fearful? I think almost all of it rests in our lack of capacity to fully believe and inhabit and know that this is the truth of us. This is who we are. When you know that you've been chosen by God himself, you have been personally and purposefully, again, get the finger, I have been purposefully and personally chosen by God. And that defines my value. Not the words of other people. What can someone say against you? Oh, I think your value. He disagrees. Argue with him. I don't think you're any good. Take it up with him. I think you're rubbish. Have a word with my dad about that. See what you think after that. You are precious. You are essential because he has chosen you. You are declared holy because of what Christ has done. So there is no place for guilt and for shame or accusation. It's all about Jesus. It's not my achievement, it's his achievement. We've been talking about that a lot. And what's more, we've got work to do. Let's crack on, let's get it done. We've got a world-transforming mission ahead of us. And you are beloved of the Father. So when you feel insecure, when you feel small, when you feel put down, just soak down and go, doesn't matter that they don't like me. Doesn't matter that they're cross with. Well, it does matter, I guess, But the most important thing is to know what my relationship is like with him. And he calls me beloved. So let's start from there. And from that place of unshakable security, the truth of who you are and whose you are, we have the resources to live out everything that follows. But we've got to get this right first. If we don't get this right, we can't do what follows. I.e., therefore, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion and kindness and humility and meekness and patience. When we're not acting out of anxiety and fear and ego or competitiveness or insecurity, then we're able to think lovingly of other people. We don't have to rush. We don't have to grasp. We don't have to fight my corner. I've got to fight my corner. Stay back. Don't you challenge me. I'm relaxed. I'm secure. I'm in God. I don't have to grasp for that stuff. We can take a breath, breathe a little bit. And notice that word meekness. There's a problem in English. Because meek rhymes with weak, we sometimes read meekness as weakness. Doesn't mean that at all. In other places, it's translated, in other versions, it's translated gentleness. Gentleness is strength under control. You don't think of a little kitten as being gentle necessarily, not when they grow up and start killing things like our cats especially, but you just think of a kitten as being weak. But a human holding a kitten and very gently stroking them, I use the word there, we're being gentle because we've got the strength. We've got the strength, but we're holding it under control. Gentleness implies strength. If you're just weak, you're just weak. That's not gentleness. Gentleness is strength, but strength under control. He says, bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against each other, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body. All that bearing, and be thankful, all that bearing with and love leading to harmony and being called to one body. Again, it's the utter indispensable, if I could say it, nature of unity. We have got to be a unified body. We've got to be together. We've got to stand together. We've been talking a lot about that in the past year. And I love the realism of it. Bear with one another. It makes me think of that. Bear with. But it's kind of realistic because if Paul said, you're always going to get on, everything's always going to be, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, he wouldn't have to say that. But he's like, no. Bear with one another. There's going to be challenges. Of course there are. You're human beings. We're human beings. We get it wrong. We're broken. It's realistic. And just a last point as I come into land about forgiveness. Forgiveness is, of course, absolutely essential. Forgiveness is not about saying that the thing didn't matter. But it is about moving beyond the thing. For your own self, someone once said, unforgiveness, the opposite of forgiveness, unforgiveness is poison that you swallow hoping the other person dies. It doesn't work like that. Unforgiveness is toxic. It will distort our life. It will distort our faith. And our forgiveness is, of course, rooted in what Jesus has done and our participation in that, our identity in that. If we are seeking justice in the world and the justice of the world, to be declared right in the court of public opinion, there's never going to be any peace there. Again, we're putting our hope in this world and not what the Father says about them. Instead, we take their sin along with my sin and we put it at the foot of the cross. That's what forgiveness is all about. It's about seeking mercy for the other in the same way that I would like mercy for myself. However, it's always important to remind ourselves that forgiveness is not the same as saying it didn't matter, that there shouldn't be consequences. Forgiveness is not the lack of response or action. Forgiveness is the choice not to hold personal charge and condemnation in yourself over that person. But love desires the best for the other person. And the best thing for the other person is while you're forgiving them, you might also need to put some boundaries in place that stop that person doing that thing. Because we don't want to facilitate that person in carrying on in that behavior, we might need to call the police. You can forgive someone and get a restraining order. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. And we're thankful. I'm just going to invite the band to come and get plugged in again, and then we'll go into our final time of sort of ministry and response, and I'll hand over to Richard. But thankfulness kind of is going to be a bridge to what I'm talking about next week. I'm talking about thankfulness and worship. But I want to suggest to you that when we take time, and I encourage you, take time, do this silly thing that I suggested to you. I know it's silly, but do it. Get that finger and point at yourself and go, I'm chosen. I'm holy. I'm beloved of the Father. And from that awakeness, from that consciousness, from that awareness, that true perspective, disconnected from the idols and the distractions and the fear and the anxiety and the insecurity, we become conscious of who we really are. You are deeply loved. You have the privilege of being called. You have the importance of that calling and that purpose. You have the freedom of your own forgiveness and the capacity to extend that forgiveness to everyone in your life. And we have the fellowship of community, of peace, of security in our own identity. And from that place, I know when I'm in that place, thankfulness flows. Thankfulness comes from that place of knowing who we are. Richard, I'm going to hand over.